Hello, everybody, and welcome in to a Tuesday, February 1st edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. I am Julian Edlow on Twitter at Julian Edlow. My co-host Steve Buchanan on Twitter at SBLVI. As I mentioned, the Unreasonable Odds podcast, which you can find on Twitter at Unreasonable Odd. If you thought it was slowing down from the divisional games, it did not. We had two wild conference championship games.
We did.
And now we have 2 weeks to talk about the Super Bowl. We will have one episode of this podcast for you this week and then get back to the 2 episodes on Super Bowl week itself. As usual, we're going to have Johnny Avello, director of DraftKings Sportsbook, and our guest will be Joe Osborne from Oddshark to break it down and give us some analysis on the game. Steve, I literally almost put something on Twitter when it was 21-3.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for a gif of maybe like a Bengals fan crying and saying live look at Steve right now.
Right.
I didn't because I didn't want to mush the game, but I mushed the game. I've never seen I know like Patriots Falcons and stuff, but it's like, oh, you have Brady. I've never seen an in-game turnaround that I can recall like the one we did in this game. And it's not because Joe Burrow and the Bengals scored. They were supposed to score after a slow start. It's that the Chiefs drive chart went touchdown, 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 end of half, self-inflicted.
Yep.
Punt, interception, punt, interception.
Yep.
I don't know how they stopped scoring. It's got to be a combination of credit to the Bengals defense, which now I like the Bengals more in the Super Bowl because of what I've seen from their defense. Like, it's just time to say you held the Raiders to teens, you held the Titans at home in teens, and you let the Chiefs score 3 points in the last 40 minutes of that game. So it's partially that. It's partially, I don't know what Mahomes drank or smoked or what he did to himself at halftime, but it is the worst I've ever seen Patrick Mahomes look after an unbelievable start. All this rambling to lead us into cash it or trash it. You can start with cash it, and I know where you'll start.
Yeah, sometimes it's okay to be early to the party, and I was very early. I might have been the first one there. I got the best parking spot in the house. Bengals. I said it all week. I feel like I'm gloating more than when I hit Robbie Ray 80-1. I was so thrilled by what I saw in that second half, and you brought it up. That going for the touchdown with 5 seconds left, that changed everything. That absolutely changed everything. And I think it goes back to, that Bills game when there were so many lead changes in the final 2 minutes. Hey, we can do this. We got the personnel to do this. And they couldn't get it done. And I can't confirm that this is the case, but I did see something that Reed wanted to go for 3 and Mahomes was like, no, we got this, and we're going to go for it. So Reed wanted to take
tried to call timeout.
Yep.
He pulled a Brian Hoyer.
Yep.
As Brian Hoyer did in Kansas City, thinking they had a timeout. That's a huge mistake.
Huge mistake. So that cost the Chiefs. That was the season right there. That miss by Tyreek Hill ended up being the season. Now let's not take away from the adjustments the Bengals made between keeping the pressure off Joe Burrow. And he did some magician moves himself. You'll watch the little tape of Josh Allen, it looked like, of avoiding some of those sacks that, 29 other quarterbacks in the league, they go down in that spot. And just the overall play by the Bengals. So if you were brave enough to take them on the live line, congrats on the Corvette or whatnot, because obviously with that massive lead against the Chiefs, the odds were stacked. And we'll ask Johnny Avello about that later in the show. But I like taking them on the spread. And I even mentioned, I just straight up like the Bengals to win this game. They pulled off either one, whatever one you took, but cash that Bengals one. That was the second biggest smile I had over the past year.
Cool. All right. My cash is,
cool.
As I said on the podcast last week, when, I told Dave Sharapan my 2 teasers, and it's, getting the Rams to +3.5, the Niners to +9.5. He said, so basically you're doing what people do when they don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, but I do know one thing that's going to happen. Both teasers are connected to the Chiefs winning, and they lost. And as soon as they lost, I knew that next game was going to middle to troll me even more. And I did correctly middle the NFC Championship game. So the Chiefs sent me from 2-0 on the teasers to 0-1. So there's my trash. I had to start with that because it links so nicely to your cash. My cash was props in the NFC game. And I responsibly did not get back in and bet on the NFC game when the Chiefs ruined all my sides for the day. But I did have a couple of strong props in that game, and they both came down to the wire, but they both came through. And that was Cam Akers under 63.5 rushing yards, closed in the high 50s. They fed him again. He had 45 in the first half, and I was very nervous. He even hurt his shoulder and left and then returned.
Right.
So that was very sweaty. And then he ends the game with 48. Perfect. Didn't get anywhere close. The other one was an extreme sweat. It was, as we mentioned on the podcast, Jimmy Garoppolo under 30.5 attempts.
Oh,
Jimmy Garoppolo was at like 24, but then threw 3 and out to get to 27. Now he has the ball back down in the game with 27. So do the math. If they throw on 4 downs, it's 41. Pass on first down to get to 28. Pass on second down to get to 29. Now it's third down. Jimmy G gets that sack. He throws the little pitch out, intercepted at 30. If it went to fourth down, clearly they're going to throw the ball and likely lose the game. But it hits 31. So that Jimmy G INT saved me my prop, won me my under 30.5 passing attempts. So those are my two cash hits as well as my trash hit. Go ahead. You got anything to trash?
Yeah, you can always count on Jimmy to throw an ENT. On INT, it was a given. He didn't do it all game, and then he did it in the biggest spot. My only trash was Rams defense anytime touchdown at 6-1. But the odds were too good with Jimmy with the INT. And quite frankly, they probably could have ran that back for the touchdown anyways. I thought it was like, there it is. There it is. And then didn't do it. But you know what? It didn't matter. We got the Bengals. We got the plus money. We got everything's great. I'm in a great spot for the Super Bowl. Had the Rams win the Super Bowl, already hedged with Bengals money line. So I got no trash for next week for after Super Bowl. No trash at all. Just going to be all cash. It is all cash. But so Rams anytime touchdown from their defense. I
like to think that my Joe Burrow rookie card auctions made back my Kansas City Chiefs losings.
Were you surprised that I didn't text you at the end of the Chiefs Bengals game?
A little.
I knew you were suffering. I didn't want to pour it on.
I couldn't believe it. But all right, go ahead. Send it to the rest of the show.
All right, so we got a jam-packed show coming up here. I'm going to start off with Odds Are, as always, with Johnny Avello, get his insight on how the book did during the championship week and some looks into the Super Bowl. Then right after that, Joe Osborne from OddsShock, one of my favorite guests coming on the show. Quick preview of the Super Bowl, some odds, some lines, some player props. Let's get to it.
You hear the music. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the man. We're now in a 3-man box, welcoming in the director of DraftKings Sportsbook, Johnny Avello, for the conveniently named segment Odds Are with Johnny Avello. Johnny, how are we doing?
Very good, guys. Good to see you. One game to go, guys. We're all the marbles, right?
One game to go in the football season. All the marbles. If you thought things were slowing down after 4 buzzer-beating divisional round winners, they did not. We essentially had 2 game-winning plays on Sunday in the conference championship games. The Niners and Rams one actually did involve taking knees, which none of the other 5 did. They were all literally won on the final play, but still obviously down to the wire. So we had the Bengals tying the largest conference championship comeback, down 18 to win in overtime. Johnny, I have to imagine, as Steve nods his head saying he knew they were going to win the whole time, if anybody didn't think that was going to wind up like 45-17 Chiefs, you're crazy. One of the most ridiculous in-game turnarounds I have ever seen. So I have to imagine that was a good result, with KC being a teaser leg, a money line parlay piece. And also the over was a really popular play with both of those offenses, but after the quick start, it wound up going under, in large part thanks to that Cincy D and Patrick Mahomes looking drunk for the second half. So, Johnny, how did DK Sportsbook wind up doing on the AFC title game?
Extraordinary amount of action, with over a couple of million tickets written on that one game only. We had an adequate result to the game, but with the abundance of Bengal money line that showed up the day of the game, Kansas City winning by 3 would have been ideal. I guess that's probably Steve out there touting to one side, and he had some followers, I'll tell you. But overall, I can't complain. It worked out well.
These lunatics, before Steve asks this question, these lunatics that have the Bengals money line and say they had it the whole way and knew it was coming through. I will say one quick, I always go astray here. The narrative on the game, like, happy for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a great story, heck of a player. The Bengals are in no way the story of that game. Their team total was 24. They scored 24 in regulation. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. The story of the game is Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs scoring 3 points in the final 40 minutes, including overtime, whatever it was. Steve, ask your question.
See, Johnny, you can tell who bet on which side by just like the disgruntledness and then the happiness that is exuding from my body, which I'm going to follow up with this question now. The in-game wager on this AFC game, what was the best number you could get on the Bengals down 21-3? And did the sportsbook take a lot of action on Cincy in-game, which thus they were able to pay off their house after they won?
Oh, I love in-game wager. And Steve, you know it. That's the time you can really get some great value. We had 16-1, but who really felt it? It looked like it, as Julian just
Don't
said,
even lie, Steve. Don't even lie.
It looked like chief domination was taking place. None of us realized that at halftime that a Mahomes impersonator was going to start the second half. We just didn't know that.
Was he playing with a bag over his head under his helmet that we didn't know about? He looked blind. It's the worst I've ever seen Mahomes play, but credit.
His brother took over.
Maybe, yes. Maybe he was doing a TikTok dance the entire second half. That's what was going on in the backfield with those scrambles.
One thing I will say, guys, is that you can't blame Mahomes entirely on this. The game plan that the Chiefs used for the first half was brilliant, and they got away from that in the second half. Started throwing screens early. I mean, just run the football. I mean, nobody's been able to stop their backs, and their receivers were wide open. So they got away from the game, and maybe not getting that 3 points. Maybe the momentum shifted also. Football's a funny game, isn't it? Just when you think you're there, you're not, and when you don't think you're there, you are. So it happens many times during the course of a season.
That I felt like was almost the Chiefs being in their own head for knowing how good they are. They're like, 5 seconds, we got this. And sure could have used those 3 points. But anyway, Johnny, tell us about some of the AFC futures on both sides here at DK Sportsbook. You said that some late money came in on Bengals money line, but throughout the course of the season, there had to be a ton of handle on KC, who's just in general the favorite. I know Buffalo was up there some and whatnot. But what were some of the larger Bengals payouts? Because I saw $1,000 free bet on DraftKings Sportsbook was used on 60-1. I think Bengals paid out 60,000.
Yep.
There were quite a few tickets cashed on the Bengals. Now, remember, both of these teams, you could have got some really great prices during the season. Chiefs weren't going particularly well. And at one time, they were up around 16-18-1 to win the Super Bowl. And they were 7-8-1 to win the conference. The Bengals, yes, there was that 60-1 out there, but there were a lot of tickets cashed at 25 to 30-1 range. And so there were multiple 5-figure payouts.
How about some of the props in this AFC title game? What were some of the player props bettors won and lost the most on? I know Travis Kelce anytime touchdown was a very popular one, but what were some of the ones that won and lost people money?
Joe Burrow over 1.5 TD passes, Mixon over 58.5 rushing yards. They were popular. Oh, and then Evan never missed McPherson over 1.5 field goals. The ones that didn't get there for the bettors were Jamar Chase receiving yards. That just fell a bit short. And Mahomes over the passing yards, which is around the 300 range. But what they did play was Mahomes. There was an alternative line, Mahomes over 250 plus yards. And that one did get bet.
All right, let's move over to the NFC side of things really quick. Another historic comeback, a double-digit fourth quarter comeback in the NFC title game. Another Shanahan collapse. I think we're at, if you go Rams, Niners, NFC title game, Niners, Chiefs, Super Bowl, and then Falcons Patriots Super Bowl, in which he was the offensive coordinator. I think the fourth quarter scores of those games and overtime is 53-0. I saw on Twitter. So I'm going to steal that number and run with it. So this one a little different though. 3.5 number pretty much all week. So Rams money line bettors and futures bettors, you get there with the win, but the Niners spread bettors got to the window on the 3.5. If you teased either side in this game, you won, like I did. Teasing Kansas City with both sides, creating the perfect window that hit, and then Kansas City blowing the game.
Too bad.
So I'll continue to be bitter about this all podcast. Total also bet down a couple of points throughout the week and easily stayed under. So what was the result for the book on the NFC title game?
Well, it was another outrageous handle, and the 3-point win for the Rams was actually a better result for us the first game. Now, we did not, we kind of held to the 3.5. We did move the money a little bit. We were 3.5 flat minus a dime, and then we were at 3.5 even sometimes. We did go to 3 once, but just for a short period of time. There was quite a bit of over money in parlays, although we saw the number come down on the total. But, they did hook up these parlays in same game parlays and other forms of parlays. And so the total ended up really doing well for us also.
Just a quick follow-up on that too. Do you notice, and you might not have an answer to this, do you notice that like when a favorite like the Chiefs lose, a flurry of bets come in for maybe, another favorite in the next game in these playoffs because people are trying to, like Julian are very bitter. So now they're trying to, get back on course. You notice anything like that in these playoffs?
Before Johnny even answers, I'm going to say we preach responsible gambling on the Unreasonable Odds podcast. I did not bet the NFC title game after my teaser my double teasers that would have won. I windowed the NFC perfectly. I just sat back. I won my props on the game, which I was happy about. No chasing from me.
Okay. So I'll give the answer to that is no.
Beautiful.
See, the bettors are listening to me.
That's what we like to hear.
Hey, Steve, there's such a flurry of money coming in on the just before the game starts. I'm sure there's some bettors that didn't like the outcome, but they already had in their mind what they were going to play for the second game. Right. I don't know if that result from the first game changed their opinion.
And then just the normal question here about in-game betting for this one. Did anyone wind up playing some Rams at all? So good plus money in the fourth quarter there.
Oh yeah, they did. Plenty of them did. They did. They got 260 was the number.
Wow.
That's not a really huge price, but you just felt they were going to, not go down in this game without a fight. And, the 49ers are just notorious for keeping games close. So there were plenty of 260 takers.
You could have much more interested me in a plus 260 Rams ticket than a 16-1 Bengals ticket, even with whatever that is, like a little less than 8 times the payout. And look what happened. All right, going to the player props in the NFC title game. Some really interesting ones actually down to the wire. I know Cam Akers under rushing yards was one that both Steve and I were on. It was in the low 60s, came down to the high 50s. He had 45, I think it was, at halftime, and he shut down the second half, stayed under. And he got hurt in game, came back and kept going. That was a sweaty one right there. Personally, I wrote up in my article, Jimmy Garoppolo under 30.5 passing attempts. On that fourth down, he would have thrown his 31st pass and gone over if he didn't get intercepted and land on 30 and wind up catching the under. And then, of course, Jimmy G interception was a popular prop that came through on that flick as he was being sacked. So a lot of results on Jimmy Garoppolo props, action decided by that last play. Which props in this game won and lost bettors the most money?
We mentioned a few of the losers. Matthew Stafford passing for 330 yards and then over 2.5 rushing yards. Mm-hmm. They were cashers, good cashers. Jimmy G over 1.5 passing TDs. Beckham over 54.5 receiving yards and Beckham over 4.5 receptions. And then Kupp and Debo both to score an anytime TD. That also put cash in the bettors' pockets. There's not a whole lot of negatives in this game. There were some of those you mentioned and a few, outliers there. But for the most part, this was a good cashing game for props for the public.
The Rams obviously loaded up on talent, which led to a lot of futures tickets on them. That's when I jumped on it. I don't care if it was a square play or not. It's there. While the Niners, while at 2-4, took some action as a serious long shot to win the NFC, and they, quite frankly, nearly got there. What was the result for the sportsbook on the NFC futures?
We won a few bucks on the Rams, but we would have certainly done much better with the Niners. The Rams are not a good team for us heading into the Super Bowl. They weren't a good team to win the division. They were bet. So there was money on them, in all the various facets that we put up. But this one we escaped a little bit. At least we didn't get pounded on this one. So, now we got a hazard with them in for the Super Bowl, but that's okay. I mean, the rate we're going to have on this, overall probably get lost in the wash.
All right, so let's move on to the Super Bowl now, finally. I think we saw this open 4.5, move to 4. As we record this, we are back at 4.5 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Where has the early money, just spread betting wise, been going on the Super Bowl? Still 12 days away as we record.
Yeah, it's really early, so it's hard. I can give you a gauge of where we're at now, but certainly not even a fraction of the money in yet. The money on the side is very close to split, but the number of total bets on the side is approximately 2/3 Bengals, 1/3 Rams. So obviously the bigger money has been on the Rams.
Yep.
The Bengals are the choice on the money line, taking roughly about 70% of the money line wagers. That shouldn't be surprising because that's the way this game's going to get bet. Bengals are going to be played on the money line. And the total right now, we're seeing slightly more on the over, and probably would think that's going to continue.
Yeah, well, the total on this opened up at 50, quickly dropped to 48. I think it's safe to say that there's been a significant amount of money going on the under thus far.
Yeah, like I said, slightly more money on the over. I would presume that trend will continue because just, being involved in so many Super Bowls, that's normally the way they get bet. I mean, when you look at it, Steve, who wants to bet on under in the Super Bowl, right? Not too many. A lot of interest there usually. There's a guy for us, but that's also bad to bet the Chiefs.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say this guy took the Chiefs. You can't trust this guy.
I mean, I've honestly never been, like, we talk about mush plays. I've never been so sure. I didn't even have the 7. I just needed them to win. I can't remember a time I've been so sure that leg was going to cash and it didn't.
Should have listened.
Unbelievable. I'm just going to remain shocked all podcast because this is what we have to talk about now.
Good.
However, DraftKings Sportsbook, very good job. Like, Super Bowl props up Sunday night. 2 weeks before, a full 2-week cycle before kickoff is pretty nuts. So Super Bowl MVP is one of the ones I want to talk about. Matt Stafford, you have to lay a little juice on, now sitting there at even money on DraftKings Sportsbook. But 2 guys I think personally are value, so I'm curious maybe the handle on them and just the handle overall. Joe Burrow is plus 225. The Bengals money line is plus 160. I know this is always a cute one, like Tom Brady didn't win a couple Super Bowl MVPs. But I have Chase is going to need another one of those 200-yard, 3-touchdown games for it not to be Burrow. I think there's some value given the distance between Burrow and the Bengals, if that's the side you're going to be on. Then Cooper Kupp, I think he was plus 650. He's down to plus 600. This guy's going to finish, 3rd in NFL MVP voting, and he can't go out and get 10 for $150, couple touchdowns, and win it in this game. Are the 2 guys I'm looking at guys that have gotten some handle, or is it going elsewhere?
Well, first of all, you mentioned the props being up on Sunday night, and I just can't say enough about our team that, constantly puts stuff up early. It takes most books 4 days to a week to get this stuff up, and our guys got it up on a Sunday night. It's incredible. It's a great team.
I've gotten messages, Johnny, from multiple people that I would consider professional sports bettors that were amazed when the DK Sportsbook props for the Super Bowl came up. Player props. I've
often gotten messages about thanking me for the Bengals. So I mean, we're getting a lot of messages.
Yep, we're two different stories.
Well, yeah. Back to this MVP stuff. Julian, you mentioned this 2.25 with Burrow. That is getting played a little. And, if you really feel that the Bengals will win, there's a good chance Burrow will be the winner. Now, Jamar Chase is getting a little action too at 18-1. So maybe it's not, if you think the Bengals are going to win, maybe not a bad idea to take a flyer on him too, right, at that price. And you mentioned Cooper Kupp. He's the other guy that's taken some money. He is 6-1 after opening up a little higher. Stafford is a short price. He's even money. He actually was minus 110. Now he's even. So they're not really piling on him at this point. But usually that's the correlation as the QB gets there. But hey, this has been a strange playoff season. So why would anything change now?
Exactly. All right, to wrap things up, Super Bowl specials, a lot of individual player props are out already on the sportsbook. As we mentioned here, there's going to be plenty more to come to. I'm sure anything you can think of probably already being construed over with the sportsbook. But have any player props specifically taken much action this far away from the game?
A couple. There's a few that are getting bet early. Now, of course, I told you we're just a fraction of money in, but Stafford over 279.5 yards, and Stafford over 1.5 passing TDs. And then the first touchdown score, we always know that's popular on our network. Mixon at 7-1 and Chase at 8-1. So a couple of early props getting some play.
All right, there we go. That is everything AFC and NFC title game was. That is an early look at the Super Bowl. And we will have Johnny back next week on Super Bowl week, when presumably a lot more of the money is in. Still, obviously, way more to come all the way up to kickoff, but a lot more. And we'll have a better picture of where some of these Super Bowl lines and some of these Super Bowl props are going. So thank you for the time, Johnny, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks as always to Johnny Avello for joining the show. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit, start doing our first look at the Super Bowl. And of course, returning guest, friend of the show, Joe Osborne from Oddshark is joining us once again. Joe, as always, great to see your handsome face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? The finish line is in sight here for the NFL season, right? It's been a long season, a great season, but I'm looking forward to these next 2 weeks and hopefully a great game.
Looking forward to the next 2 weeks. Looking forward to a much-needed vacation after this as well. That is coming up for Julian and I, so we're looking forward to that as well. Let's just get right into it here. As we record this Tuesday afternoon, the current lines right now, we have, of course, the Rams are the favorites in this one here. 4.5 points on the board for the Rams right now, over under a 48. This has been bet down, as we just talked about with Johnny quickly. It's opened up at 50. It's been bet down to 48. Joe, early lean on this one. I saw your tweet a couple days ago, giving Joe Burrow the hook, baby. That ain't something you want to do, but let me see how you feel about this one so far.
Yeah, when it opened at that 3.5, I was like, okay, my mind's made up. I like the Bengals. Now we're up to 4.5. So I really like the Bengals here at this number, 4.5. Like if you want to look at it logically and statistically and back it up all with stats, yeah, the Rams are the better team. They have the better defense, especially better defensive personnel. But it doesn't always work out like how the stats say it will work out. If it was that easy, guys, we'd all be making a lot of money with these bets every week, right? And that's obviously not the case, but we've seen this pattern in the Super Bowl the past decade and a half almost. Underdogs are 10-4 against the spread, right? Something weird happens in that game. How could you have logically made sense of Nick Foles beating Tom Brady, Eli Manning beating Tom Brady those 2 times, right? But there is something, I'm 100% buying in on this Joe Burrow hype, right? There's just something about the guy. You're going to hear that a lot over the next 2 weeks. It's going to be annoying. You're going to be pounded over the head with it. But, hey, I'm not fading this guy as an underdog. So in his career, in games that he started and finished, so he left one game due to an injury there against Washington last year. But in those games as an underdog, 13-4-1 against the spread. And the Bengals just fantastic as an underdog this season. As a dog of 3.5 or more, they're undefeated against the spread, 5-0. Now, the Rams very well might win this game. but they have to win by 5 points. So if you want to take them straight up, go ahead. But yeah, I like the Bengals here to cover this one. You know, a big storyline is, oh my God, good luck versus Aaron Donald and Von Miller in this pass rush. Yeah, guys, the Bengals offensive line sucking is nothing new. They've stunk all season, yet they won their division and they continue to win games and be a fantastic bet against the spread. So I looked into it a little bit. So the Bengals played 10 games this season versus teams that ranked in the top half of the league in QB pressure percentage. They went 8-2 outright in those games. So their offensive line stinking is nothing new. We've seen it throughout the playoffs now. And one thing I will say about the Bengals is in these playoffs, we still haven't seen their best game yet. I think that game might be coming in the Super Bowl, right? Like they haven't really been very impressive in the playoffs. You know, they've had impressive quarters. Their defense had a really impressive second half versus Kansas City, obviously, but we haven't seen their best game yet. So, you know, when people are throwing out reasons to pick the Rams, they're just kind of naming names, right? They're Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. It's like, okay, well, look into it a little bit here, right? Go look. People say Jalen Ramsey, right? And they say their receiving game, they got no chance. Go look at the top receiver on some of these teams versus the Rams. Mike Evans had a pretty damn good game against them a couple weeks ago in the divisional round, right? Deebo Samuel broke a couple big ones too. Right. So I think there's enough ammo to make a case for the Bengals here at plus 4.5. I like them quite a bit.
And just real quick on that pressure point too, like that was obviously, a big story coming into this one, because in the game prior, the Titans got to him numerous times, sacked him 9 times. He still completed 76% of his pass attempts for over 300 yards. And there was a couple instances this weekend, especially that missed tackle by Chris Jones, where Burrow was able to escape that pressure and still get the ball downfield. Like the Bengals were able to make some of those key adjustments, and Julian knows this very well, in the second half that allowed them to win this game. So, I'm not saying this is obviously the toughest matchup that they're going to endure, but what I saw from the Bengals on Sunday is really makes me confident that they're going to be able to overcome this and at least cover this spread by far. Go ahead, Julian.
The Chris Jones sack was like literally Patriots Giants helmet vibe, the helmet catch vibe type of play. Like he was down a week after getting sacked 9 times. And he starts getting out of those. Like it was ridiculous. And yes, I did have the Chiefs tease in 2 teasers to perfectly give myself that window and get it ruined. But at some point, that pressure, like that was my favorite. You gave a lot of great numbers on Twitter, Joe. My favorite one from you was the top half of the league in pressure, the 10 games against him going 8-2. Yeah, is insane. Like imagine if they've been getting by with this O-line all season. Sure. Eventually they'll address it and they'll be even better.
Yeah, it's nothing new. And one other thing I'll add about the Rams is people seem to have a really short memory with this team, right? When the Rams are on, you can make a case for them being the best team in the league, but I don't think that they can be trusted. They almost had a meltdown of epic proportions versus Tom Brady out there in Tampa Bay. Some of those turnovers, what the hell happened there? Week 18 of the regular season, they did have a meltdown versus San Francisco. They blew a pretty big lead. The week before that, they barely beat Tyler Huntley out in Baltimore, right? So I do think this team has some issues, and it could be one of these games. They very well might outplay the Bengals in this one. But, Matthew Stafford, we've seen the blooper reel before. Maybe he's saving one for the biggest stage here. So it could be a situation like that too.
I already trust Joe Burrow as a better big game quarterback than Matt Stafford. Like I know Stafford's got the years under his belt, but Joe, everybody wanted to bring up that old quote from whatever it was, October, about him saying SEC stadiums are louder than the NFL, but he's played in national championship games and he's played well in those big games. So
one of the first props I checked on, because I'm absolutely taking this, is over half an interception for Matt Stafford at minus 130. Just put that in there, call it a win, and move on.
He managed not to do it in the first 2 playoff games, but then did it against the Niners. But what did he have? The last 4 games of the regular season, he had like 6 or something like that. Is that the number? I got to bring up the game log.
He was on an incredible run of them, that's for sure.
Well, he had the most pick sixes in the league during the regular season. He had 4 during the regular season. That is absurd when you think about that.
Yeah, and a lot of this game's going to be on him. Like, if you look into the stats, the Rams aren't very good at running the football. Like, I invite people to dig into that. So a lot of this is going to be on Matthew Stafford, and he will be throwing the football a lot in this one. So, yeah, even if it's not his fault, it might be a tip ball at the line or something. They pick it off. I think that's a very good bet at close to even money.
I sold Stafford short. It was not 6 in 4 games. It was 7 in 3 games to end the regular season.
Wow.
That is bad. And we're looking at a Bengals defense that, again, I said this with Johnny Avello when Johnny was on. The story of that game, as good of a feel-good story as it is for Joe Burrow, and everybody likes Joe Burrow essentially at this point in time. The Bengals scored 24 points in regulation. Their team total was 24. So Joe Burrow and the offense did what they were supposed to do. It's the Chiefs scoring 3 points over the last 35 minutes of regulation plus overtime that is the story. And what made that story happen is who knows what Mahomes drank in the locker room, because he did not look like himself coming out. But the Bengals defense is that story. And they picked him off twice in the second half. So yep. I think if you can go into Arrowhead and pick off Mahomes twice, you're probably going to find one the way you're playing for Matthew Stafford at this point.
I think one of the worst things too for the Rams is Akers being back. Because you can't say that he's been, the Akers that we saw before he was injured, and they continue to feed him the ball when it's pretty obvious that Sony Michel at this point in time, not long-term, at this point in time, Sony Michel is the better back, but they continue to run the ball with Akers, and they're just not gaining anything when he's taken the ball. Like, I think last week he was averaging like 3.7 yards per carry, but that was only on 13 carries that he took. But those 2 games against the Niners and I'm forgetting who he was in the first game, he hasn't looked good, and they just keep forcing him the ball. And if anything, I think it's almost like a negative for them. And I think that's one of the reasons why this offense can struggle.
Guys, 2.9 yards per rush attempt in the playoffs for the Rams. Now, to put that in perspective, how bad that is, the Houston Texans were the worst over the course of the regular season at 3.4. They're at 2.9. I know it's a much smaller sample size here, and you can make a case that, hey, the Bengals aren't, lights out against the run by any means, but man, 2.9 yards, that's not very good. So a lot of that is going to be on Stafford. It's going to make for, if they're running on early downs, which we'll probably see them do, it's going to make for longer conversion attempts on third down. That might lend itself to a lower scoring game too. Like, I like that number when it came out at 50, 48, maybe not so much anymore, but you combine that, can't be all Bengals heavy. The Bengals have been awful in the red zone here in the playoffs. Like, I was so frustrated in that game against the Raiders. I think I might have had the over in that game. And they kept getting into the red zone. I think they were 1 for 5 on touchdowns in the red zone. And that's kind of continued throughout the playoffs here for them. Now that could turn around, right? That's just a small sample size, and they might see some positive regression, but you combine a few things like that, and I think we could be in for a bit of a lower scoring game. Hopefully not low scoring like the Rams in their last Super Bowl they were in against the Patriots. What was that, 13-10?
13-3.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if I do go with the under, hey, I'll take that. I'll be happy with that as long as the Bengals are the one with the 13, right? But
that was also with the legendary Jared Goff, Rams legend in that Super Bowl. So we have to take that into account too as well. So I would assume that you're leaning on the under then of 48.
Yeah, I am. With we've seen some slow starts for Cincinnati here throughout these playoffs, and we got to give their defense a little bit of credit here too. Like, it's all about peaking at the right time, right? Like, if you look at the stats throughout the course of the regular season, maybe middle of the pack, you can make a case for them. But lately, hey, they made some fantastic adjustments in that second half versus, you have to give that, everyone's, saying that Kansas City beat themselves. Well, a little bit.
Right.
You got to give the Bengals some credit for that too. The week before that, big bad Derrick Henry comes back. Tennessee healthy for the first time all season. They scored 16 points at home, and they held the Raiders to under 20 in the wild card round too. So maybe they are peaking at the right time. So yeah, that combined with the issues running the ball, the Rams are a pretty good defense too. Absolutely have to give them credit. And Cincinnati struggles in the red zone. Yeah, I would go for lean under 48 for sure.
So before we go to props, I guess I'll say, so the only thing I have in on this game so far, I said to you guys before we recorded, but it's moved a little bit. I teased the Bengals up to 10.5 because I didn't think we'd see it again. It went down to 4. I thought it would be 10 flat. It's back. So you can still use that teaser leg as we record on Tuesday, February 1st. I did put it with under 56.5. So I got a good number there. Now you get it up to 54. I still think teasing Bengals in the under, getting that 54 number is pretty solid. But Joe, you mentioned the slow starts for the Bengals. Super Bowls in general are slow starts. People are nervous. Coaches are figuring it out. You have Zach Taylor, who's a former assistant of Sean McVay. So you have guys that know each other, who maybe know a little bit of each other's game plans. I was shocked. The first quarter total I thought was up at 9.5. The first quarter total is 7.5 now.
7.5. So they know what they're doing.
I can't get my hands dirty there. That's, know, once a touchdown scored, you're just going to be sweating the whole quarter. I don't feel like doing that. First half, 23.5. Okay. Obviously 24, getting it right at half of the total would be nicer, but first half under 23.5 feels like a pretty decent bet to me in this game for those that can stomach it. I know not many people like to bet unders in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's not too bad. I mean, the Rams look pretty good in Tampa Bay in that first half versus the Bucs. You know, we obviously saw what they did to the Cardinals and the wild card round. So yeah, I could see a slow start offensively. I'm going to give that number a little bit more time to breathe myself and dig. I still have to dig into this quite a bit, right? It's only been 48 hours here since it's all been decided, but yeah, there's a few good spots there that I think do favor the under. Not in the first quarter though. That's not for me. 7.5.
A little too low for my taste.
Yeah.
Steve, anything on the sides totals before we go?
Just real quick, second half points per game. Rams at 13.9, Bengals at 13.6. They're just a couple points away from each other too. So I think those second half numbers are definitely, I think one's the target.
Yeah, I would agree. And you see how well the Bengals, it's kind of like they need a bit of adversity, right? So maybe if they had every reason to quit in that game, my God, everyone on Twitter just completely gave up on them, myself included, with having the Chiefs on a teaser ticket, of course. So I wasn't happy with how that one ended. It's one of those, I lost my bet, but emotionally, from a fandom perspective, I was kind of happy because you guys see this Miami Dolphins helmet behind me, right? Like I am a football fan who has no hope. I have no emotional investment. I've had it a little bit, the Dolphins have given us a little spark the past couple seasons, but it's nice to see a team that's been a perennial loser, picking in the top 10 of the draft every year, break through and get there. So maybe I'll get there someday, probably not too soon, but hopefully before all my hair falls out or something.
Well, you just need Tua. You just need Tua to become Joe Burrow. That's not a big ask or anything.
Yeah.
The Dolphins didn't tank right.
They
could have had Joe Burrow, but they didn't tank. They didn't tank right the first year under Brian Flores. That's why he really got fired.
Yep.
So let's go. Obviously, the player props are tough to maybe bet quite this early, but let's just touch on them before we get out of here. Both quarterbacks heavily juiced to throw over 1.5 touchdowns. Burrow's minus 155, Stafford's minus 235. Burrow yardage 276, Stafford right there, same ballpark, 279. We mentioned the interception. Matt Stafford 135 on the INT, Burrow's 120. We have rushing receiving props up for some of the bigger names. I'll say really quick before I hand it off to you guys. Great content here. I'm not even going to think of his name. Who is the Rams tight end that filled in now that Higbee's hurt? Blanton. There you go, Steve. He had a random first touchdown score where everybody was like, who was betting first touchdown score was like, well, who the heck is this guy? Blanton played really well.
He did.
Coming in relief of Higbee. And I'll pull up his game log in here if I can find him. Yeah, Kendall Blanton caught all 5 of his targets for 57 yards against the Niners. Wow. They're keeping this one off the board because Higbee is going to be questioned. It's one of those 2-week injuries, and we're not going to know for a while, and they're going to try and keep it secret if Higbee plays or not. But Cincinnati not good against the tight end position.
Yeah.
So this is one for me. They ranked 29th against
Yeah.
the tight end position. This one for me, if we get low numbers on Blanton, I bet we're going to see him bet up huge throughout the course of the week whenever they start to come out. That's one that I'm very interested in getting an over on.
Yeah, that's one that I absolutely will need a little bit more clarity on, but I don't think Sean McVay is going to do us any favors and give us that clarity. But
No.
One I like here, guys, is I find that Jamar Chase at 80.5, that's a pretty soft number. If you ask me, he's never been more involved in the offense. He only had 54 yards versus Kansas City the other day in the AFC Championship game, but he was targeted 9 times,
right.
6 receptions. But in the weeks prior to that, 109 versus Tennessee, 116 versus Las Vegas. I wouldn't really count the week 18 game because I don't think he played in the second half. But the week before that, 266, 125. A lot of games there were double-digit targets. And I know everyone's going to say, oh, Jalen Ramsey acting like you can't throw to that side of the field. And who knows if Jalen Ramsey's even going to be shadowing him 100% of the time. But as I discussed off the top, we've seen some number one receivers have big games versus the Rams here lately. Mike Evans had a big one. Jefferson had a big one there for the Vikings. We've seen Debo have a couple good games as well. We saw AJ Green back in mid-December go off for over 100 yards versus the Rams. So I like that one. I think that's a safe number. And we know the guy's an absolute home run hitter. Would anyone be shocked if he had a 50-yard touchdown?
Right.
No. Like, he can get this on 3 catches. I don't think, that will necessarily be the case, but over 80.5, I think he's going to get double-digit targets in that game. So I like that one quite a bit.
27.5, real quick, 27.5 yards is Jamar Chase long reception prop.
Okay.
Which ties in quite nicely.
I like Beckham. He's at 64.5. It feels like it's maybe 6 yards too short. Like, I'd probably play that up to 69.5, but 19 targets in these playoff series, averaging 91 yards per game in those 2 games. Like, if it's not going to Cooper Kupp, it's been going to Odell Beckham, and he's performing, man. Like, I know, when you think of this offense, it starts and ends with Cooper Kupp, but Beckham has been doing exactly what the Rams needed him to do. And it's obvious in these playoffs, Stafford trusts him with the amount of targets that he's getting. So I feel like that's a few yards off already. So I'm not crazy on betting on some of these props so early, but that's one that I would not be shocked by the time we get to game time if that's not closer to 70 than it is now.
One for Beckham to keep an eye on. So his longest reception is set at 23.5. The Bengals this season, they were 30th in passing plays of 20+ yards allowed. So I was betting a lot of Bengals overs in the second half, with that kind of being a focus, right? Like, you're going to see big chunks of yards in short periods of time. And like I said, Beckham's getting a lot more involved in the offense. He had a 29-yard catch versus San Francisco, at 31 versus the Cardinals there in the wild card round. Yeah, he's just getting more involved, more comfortable in the offense. I'm not the big Beckham fan. I didn't think he was going to be that big of a difference maker. Then again, Robert Woods was still healthy when he did come to the team, so he's more involved than maybe that they planned he would be, but I don't mind that over 23.5.
Real quick, just going on the long receptions. As we said, these are early props, so I'm doing a little research on the fly here. Chase went over, I think, his first 6 games on that long reception, but he's only gone over, well, I say only, more than half the time, but 11 of 20 games this year. Cooper Kupp also set at 27.5 long reception. Cooper Kupp has gone over 27.5 yards on his long reception in 16 of 20 games this season.
Okay, let's lock that in.
Yeah, we'll take that now.
Okay.
I know this one a little bit because I do the Game Within the Game podcast, which is presented by DraftKings with Brad Howe. He's out of West Virginia. We record those. I record them with him on Thursdays. And he's always given me long reception props for the Thursday night football game. So when the Rams were on, he was talking about Cooper Kupp. So I've been tracking it a little. He didn't get it in the NFC title game. But he has, prior to that, he was 16 of 19, and now he's at 16 of 20.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at that, that's a fantastic bet against this defense, which, like I said, gives up a lot of big passing plays. So yeah, that would absolutely be one to target.
Seems like a play. And that I don't even know if that one just moved. The juice on that one is minus 120. I thought it was minus 110 when I was looking at it and it moved, but I'm not a very bright guy, so I probably just looked at it wrong.
Oh yeah, you took the Chiefs last week.
Yeah, I did.
We know.
So now you're indirectly calling Joe dumb because he also bet the Chiefs with me.
Well, see, Joe wasn't on the pod with us. I was doing everything in my power to convince you to change your bet. So that is on you. Joe, Joe did his own research. That's fine. Okay.
I will continue to say I have never been. I mean, we've seen comebacks. The Patriots Falcons come back. I'm trying to think of another one. I don't know if I've ever been fully like I was just at 99.9% Chiefs will win the game. There's no like it just I can't remember watching a game thinking that there's no way this winds up going the other way. And like I said, it's not because the Bengals got to 24 points in regulation and 27 total because they were going to pick it up at some point. It's that the Chiefs had 21 points 25 minutes into the game and landed on 24. I'm never going to figure that one out.
They blew it, man, at the end of the first half when there was 5 seconds left on the clock. And the only place where you couldn't throw the ball, they threw it, right? You should have taken the 3 points, right? They got greedy. And then I don't know if I've ever seen a quarterback at that level drop off so much from the first half to the second. That was unbelievable. Him scrambling and almost taking them out of field goal position. That was just wild.
Over the course of a season, like guys have their moments, but like you just said, like a single in-game drop-off from the level Mahomes was playing to the level that he finished the game, I cannot recall anything like that.
One other prop here, guys, really quickly is one that I have my eye on. It's the Joe Mixon receiving yards. It's at 25.5, and we're seeing him be a lot more involved in the pass game as well. He's actually topped this in 5 straight games.
Yeah.
He only had 3 catches on 3 targets in the last game, but previous to that, 7, 5, 8, and 6. So, that might be one of these adjustments because the Bengals offensive line is so awful that they're looking to get the ball out a little bit quicker, right? So I could see that one hitting too. And another one, you can look at the Mixon rushing plus receiving. I think that's somewhere in the ballpark of 90. Which he's gone over quite a bit here over the last couple of games. So that's not a bad play either.
And those Mixon yards, I think, came in the first quarter because it looked like at least the game plan for the Bengals was to get the ball out quick. So if you're going to get the ball out quick, who's the easiest guy to go to? Mixon. So it felt like the game plan in the first quarter. And so I wouldn't be surprised if like what you just mentioned is what's happening in the first quarter of this game too as well. So that's a good call out too. I do like that number a lot.
All right. Any other, I know a lot of time, but any other thoughts on the game, guys? Any other bets we're liking?
I'm going to go with heads on. I'm going to go with heads on the coin toss, boys. Right. Everyone says tails never fails. I know there's been a lot of discussion about the coin toss this year, the past couple of weeks in the NFL, but I'm going to go with heads. I'm pretty confident in that one. It will be my largest wager on the Super Bowl this year. So heads it is.
The only time you have a 50-50 shot. It's the only time you can have a legit 50-50 shot.
Yeah. It's funny how people with the overtime Kansas City had they won that coin toss. If they went down and scored a touchdown, I guarantee that rule would have been changed in the offseason for the NFL overtime. But thankfully, Cincinnati was able to stop them.
By the way, yes to overtime plus 950.
Okay. Well, if you look at these games that Cincinnati's playing in, going right down to the wire, even when you go back to Week 17 versus Kansas City, right? They are going right down to the wire quite a bit, and that's kind of been the case for the Rams, at least in their 3 of their last 4 games, right? So, yeah, that's not a bad long shot to target,
right?
All right, fair enough. That is a early look at the Cincinnati Bengals Los Angeles Rams Super Bowl out in LA. Crazy. We didn't mention this. We go all these years without a home field Super Bowl, and then just like that, 2 years in a row, we got a team playing at home. But I did see some odds makers say they are assigning between 0.5 point home field advantage to the Rams. literally meaningless.
It's not much of a home field advantage as it is. And then you factor in that it's 2 weeks between games.
Cincinnati already canceled school for February 14th.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Those people that have been, tortured over the years and got a Super Bowl in 1988 when I was 1 year old, those people are flying out and going to the Super Bowl. This is not, Patriots hey, are you going this year? I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if I have the money right now. People are going to this game from Cincinnati.
Yeah, people make too much of a big deal out of home field advantage these days. They're not hopping on a Greyhound bus and sleeping two to a bed at, some dump motel. You know what I mean? These guys are traveling in style. They have the best of all the amenities at their disposal, right? Maybe even better than some of them are living at home, right? Some of these young guys. So, I put no stock in any type of home field advantage for the Rams here.
No, I think the only thing you can do is in season, try and maybe look at a spot like, oh, you're going here, and then here, and you're getting in on Saturday night to the West Coast for a Sunday morning game or whatever. This isn't that. You're going out days in advance, practicing there, sleeping at the 5-star hotel. I'm confident to say there is no home field in this game, and I think there's going to be a big time Bengals crowd there. All right, so there's some early leans from us here on the Unreasonable Odds podcast. Thank you to Joe Osborne from OddsShark for joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at JTFOZ. Joe, anything you got going on at OddsShark you want to tell the people about?
Just full steam ahead, man, towards the Super Bowl. I'm going to be doing deep dives on all the major props. I'm doing videos for quarterbacks, receiving, and running backs. We're going to have a big show the Friday before the game, analyzing everything, guys, from the game to, of course, the national anthem, which we're all looking forward to. I don't know if they announced who's singing yet, but the over-under time on that's always fun to handicap. Outside of the game itself, I think that is the most interesting thing to bet on. So, you can just find everything on my Twitter. Everything gets dumped there, JTFOZ, so check me out there.
Boom. That's a podcast. This is Unreasonable Odds. This will be our only show for this week on Unreasonable Odds. But Super Bowl week, we'll be coming back at you with 2 podcasts. As we mentioned, we'll have Johnny Avello. Again, a lot more information from behind the book at DraftKings Sportsbook. And we will have some guests to throw your way. So stay tuned, and we'll talk to you guys next week.